Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Well, hey, good morning, guys. This is Behind the Beards. We're going to pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and reveal the things that you need to know about the people who are called to lead your churches and your ministries. I am Joshua Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My partner on the other side of the screen is youth minister in Topeka, Kansas, a good friend and a great brother, Aaron Partlow. Aaron, what's going on this morning, man?
This morning, it is a great morning. If I could do this podcast from the front porch, Josh, I would be there with my feet up, drinking iced coffee outside in this beautiful Oregon-like weather is what it feels like. You don't get Oregon-like weather in Kansas.
You don't get Oregon
not very
weather
often
in Baton Rouge either, unless you consider just simply hot, humid, muggy, and rainy Oregon weather.
Well, that's not true. Like, in the winter in Oregon, it rains a lot, so you're just wet all the time. And when I was in Baton Rouge, when I was outside, I just felt like I was wet all the time. So, I mean,
That's right. You're sweating. So
it's almost the same.
my Jeep is still drying out from when I got caught in a storm. I guess last week. You know, it rains here pretty regularly, like daily, most of the time. And I wait for a nice little lull, and then I can kind of make it home. And it was a big thunderstorm kind of rolling, and I thought, all right, I got a little window here. I can make it home. It's just drizzling a little bit. So I start making my way home, and this crack of lightning hits, and it starts raining sideways. I mean, I was soaked. All my cup holders were full of water. I had to stop and get gas. A lady had run out of gas, and so she's trying to push her car up the incline of the gas station entrance. I was like, I'm already soaking wet. What's a little more rain? So I ran out and helped her push in. So it was fun, right? One of the fun times of driving a Jeep. I usually have windows with me, so I can kind of close them up if I need to. But I was toast, man. There was no going back.
Yikes. That's a nightmare. That's funny. That happened to my aunt. She came to visit us from California, and she was at Walmart. She's like, it's raining so much. And so I called her. I said, hey, just go back inside and shop for like 5-6 minutes and come back and it'll stop. She's like, oh no, this rain's going to last forever. And I was like, no, literally, like, just sit down and enjoy it for a couple minutes. And she didn't, and she got soaked. And as soon as she got to the car, it stopped raining. And she called me back. She's like, I didn't listen. I walked to the car and it was raining so much. And, now it's not raining at all. And I was like, yeah, welcome to Kansas, where we rain hard and give out early. Like, we're just done.
Yeah, it does. Like, it kind of
just funny.
Hits storms, crashes down, and then it moves out. They have a name for them here. The weathermen call them bubblers. I guess because they bubble up in the afternoon from the sun and the heat. Rain a little bit. Bring just enough rain to bring the humidity up because, 85-90% humidity isn't humid enough. We need a little spot here to make us more humid. But it's good, man. It's summertime. Kids got a week of school under their belt. We're looking at we talked last week a little bit.
Have your kids started?
Yeah, they started a week ago. They've been in a week and a half, I guess. So half online, half in school. It works. It's kind of the nature of the beast, I guess. So they're adapting, trying to figure out the online stuff. Heather started back with her classes this week, all mostly online, and then clinicals in the hospital. So
nice.
Yeah, the life of
that's awesome.
Well, this week I've turned into something a little. She's got something for class all week. Every day this week, she's got to be in class for, the fun times of getting into class where you've already read the syllabus once or twice, and then the teacher gets to come into class and read you the syllabus again. So it's like, why are we doing this?
Oh, I know. I hated syllabus day. That was like I always wanted to skip, but then like I always knew it would like count against me or something.
Yeah, like who knows, right?
I like those teachers who are like, yeah, and here's your syllabus, and you were supposed to read this, and so we're gonna start the first 4 chapters of the book. Hopefully, you read. Yeah. You like walk in and you're already behind in your reading.
Or what I liked even more were the teachers that said,
college was crazy.
Here's your syllabus. Now you may go, because I'm not going to read it to you. You're grown. Figure it out.
Oh, right.
If you have any questions, ask your classmates, because I'm not answering questions about the syllabus. Bye.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. That kind of leads.
Pretty straightforward.
It is.
Turn in work, you get grades.
That's right. Kind of takes us to what we're talking about here today. Why didn't they teach us about this in school? There's been some times, in ministry. Goodness. I don't know about you. Sometimes where I felt super prepared, super adequate at the task at hand. And then there's been those moments where I've looked and said, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I don't belong here. And this is not what they prepared me for in ministry of any kind. So anything you remember most about being in school? Anything that you've used and said, yes, this is what it's all about?
Oh, man. My most useful, what did I use in class? That's a really good question. I guess when I really think about that, there was a couple things that were really useful to me. I fondly remember when I think of college, I remember Dr. Baird's classes at Oklahoma Christian. That's where I attended, and then, that's where you attend. That's where we attended. But anyway, I remember his classes, and I loved his classes because they were so conversational. And I think a lot of ministry is navigating and getting through conversations and being able to do that well. And so that was really helpful to me, was to sit through all of these classes about different things. I think one of the best classes that I took from him, and I'm trying to think of what the actual title of the class was. And it's just not coming to me. But basically, we talked about it was an ethics class. That's I don't know why I couldn't think of the word ethics.
Ethics and evidence.
It was Christian ethics.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of reading for that class because you had to read the secular view, but then you also had to read the Christian view as well. And then we would just sit down and in class and he would talk about both sides, and then the last part of class we would just talk. Okay, what do you guys think? And he would play. Dr. Baird is the best devil's advocate that I have ever seen. He just you can never tell where he's at or what he's going to be talking about, or where he actually falls. I think he did tell us usually at the end of class where he personally felt about it too, which was always nice. I do always have a pet peeve if a teacher, never tells you what they actually think. Well, you're an adult. You need to decide for. Yes, but I would like to know your opinion, please.
That's right.
But anyway,
I am in
so
this
that was
class
really
studying
helpful
under you for a reason. So
yes, I am paying a lot of money for this class. So
right.
Please tell me what you think. Stop giving me just all the information. What about you? Anything else stick out to you?
Well, that's a second ago. This little dude right here, Epic, from I think it's Robert Gregg. Yes, he was a minister out there in Yukon, and the Epic, the story God is telling. It's a it's a little book. You can read through it in probably just a couple of hours. But I remember reading that and just being completely. In the moment reading that going, man, this is really good stuff, as it talked about who we are as people of story.
Yeah.
But I think advanced homiletics what I have found after the fact.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize Ronnie White, he was the adjunct professor there. He was, a minister in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up, we had taken homiletics, which was basically how you construct a sermon. And we had to preach like 3 times in that class, which was fun. But then advanced homiletics, if I remember correctly, the only requirement for that class was to show up at your assigned time and preach. And I remember him saying, the only excuse for you not showing up at your assigned time is if you are dead. And even then, I'll need a doctor's note. So, to get this in your mind, I said, it doesn't matter what you've had going on through the week. Sunday's coming, and it comes every week like clockwork. And you may have to do 3 or 4 funerals in a week. You may have to do several weddings in a week. You may have all kinds of things going on. But in this, you're not going to switch. You're assigned a time, and you make it. Because you're going to have come a time in your ministry where you're just going to have to show up and give the people a word from God. And that to me, having, kind of gone through this, there's been those moments, right, where I've just been like, dude, I am not prepared for this because of the things that have transpired over the week. But I can't call somebody on Sunday morning and say, hey, can we switch?
Yeah.
There's still that that requirement, that expectation. So, that's been something that to me, that mindset and that thought process has been just really, really helpful as I've kind of gone along. So,
yeah, for sure.
There's some things that maybe I didn't appreciate enough as we kind of went along. We talked a little bit before we started here about that intro to ministry class, right? There's a lot of things in that class that I go back and think about now, and it's like, man, I really should have paid more attention. Josh Kincaid kind of led ours.
Better notes.
I should have kept notes, maybe. There's some notes I have I wish I'd thrown away, and some notes that I don't have that would be really nice.
What did I use my laptop for? Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's we'll talk about that in a minute. I have a funny story about all of my notes from college. So I got to start ministry with nothing. So my junior year, I was going to get married, and so I was putting all my stuff in storage. I didn't live there. I wasn't from there. So I had accumulated a lot of stuff that I got to put in storage for the summer because I'm never there in the summer because I was doing internships or going back to Oregon or whatever. So all of my Bible books, all of my notes, all of my material that I cherished and loved and all that kind of stuff that I was like, okay, this is going to be really useful when I get into ministry. Well, something happened, and they just broke into the storage unit and stole everything. All they left was this nasty couch that I had in there. They stole everything. And so, which I know, like, they just looked through it and were like, oh, this is all junk, and threw it in a dumpster somewhere. So I actually lost like 4 years of college notes and books and everything, all gone. So all I had left were the stuff from my senior year, which was pretty funny, hilarious now. But so I guess like something that I appreciate from college is being able to go back and look over some of the handouts, some of the stuff that I had worked on that I had. It's really useful and really nice to have. I think the biggest underappreciated part I would think of my schooling has to be the community aspect. I don't think it's really easy for a youth minister or for a preacher to find community. Mm-hmm. I was just talking about that with somebody, and I can't even remember. I feel like I talk about it a lot, but a place where you don't have to be the youth minister, and as you, Josh, like, a place where you don't have to be you're not known as the preacher. You're just known as Josh. And you know that title comes with a lot of weight, and it could also, you know, comes with quite a bit of a burden. And sometimes you just need to, you know, be around friends or be around people who just see you as you. And college really allows you to do that. You're not in ministry fully yet. You're being prepared for it. But that community is really strong. And hopefully, if you go to higher education of whatever sort, you create and build this community that you can use over the next, you know, years and years and years and years. Or hopefully you find a ministry job where you can walk into a community of preachers or youth ministers.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? And finding a place where you just, you know, for me, it's sports officiating.
It's probably a whole nother episode.
Probably so. But it is part of what, you know, I think about Josh Kincaid bringing in Richard and Gina Lynn May. And at the time, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is a former minister and his wife. And I knew them, but I didn't like click like kind of what was going on until he's talking about what it is to be a minister. And then she at the end asks a question. She goes, so what do you do when your minister has an affair, or when your minister husband has an affair? And she starts like grilling him with these questions, and it got super uncomfortable, you know, in that classroom. And then she gets up and she tells her story. You know, my husband had a mistress and her name was the church. The church took precedent over, you know, everything else in our lives. It took precedent over me, over our family, over our kids, over holiday meals. You know, so they began telling their story about how they kind of got through some things. And I don't think I really appreciated that in the moment as much as I did later on, as you started kind of seeing those stresses and pressures. Because you've always kind of thought, yeah, you know, ministry work, it's got to be perfect for raising a family. It's flexible. Everything in church life is concerned about you and your wife and your kids, and they are. But the stress and the pressure are so radically different from the things we experience other places that, even though they tried to prepare us in some of those ways for it, I was not really ready for that kind of when it came about. There's been I'm trying to think if there's like any specific, you know, moments that I remember. One of them I shared last week with Dr. Harrison, you know, with him completely bursting my ego bubble with some hard truth. But I'm trying to think if there's any like specific moments in my schooling where I have these kind of aha moments. You have any of those that kind of stick out?
I have. Yeah, I do. I have. So one of those like special moments for me actually came from one of my internships. You know, last week I talked about these sweet old lying ladies. They tend to disappear and they morph and turn into hard truth ladies. And I had a lady at a church, and I preached a sermon one time, and she came up to me and handed me a list of words. They were a list of words that I had made up. It was like 5 words. She's like, these are not words. And if you're going to preach, you need to learn how to use real words and not make up words. And I just was like, I was like, that's really like rough. That's really mean. And I think I said that to her. I said something along those lines. I was like, wow, that's really critical. I hope that you listen to the rest of the lesson. She said, sweetie, you had a great lesson. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to make it in ministry, you have got to be more like rubber. She said, because I'm a nice old lady, and there's some mean people and some angry people, and they're going to come at you with some angry words and judgments and all this kind of stuff, and you have got to be more rubber. You've got to take them, let them go. Don't let them stick. And I was like, what? Who are you you talking to? What? Why are you telling me this? Like, just tell me I did a good job and go get your chilies. And now, after 9 years of ministry, I'm like, yeah, man, if you ain't no rubber tree, you're gonna get eaten alive. You know, the for me, like the church is such a great place, and it's a loving place, and it's an accepting place, and a place where we go for forgiveness and grace. But also sometimes, like, that hard fact of, like, we take it out on the people that we love the most. You know, you've heard people kind of say that, like, yeah, you know, unfortunately, like, as a minister, like, sometimes people don't, like, put the gloves on, you know, and they kind of hit hard. And as a minister, like, you've really got to you've really got to take the punches and show that grace and that mercy and that love and that forgiveness. And it's really difficult and really hard. And I will always remember that moment with that lady, because that's what she was trying to tell me. She's trying to tell me that, hey, you've got to be prepared that somebody's going to, like, listen to your sermon, and they're going to be like, yeah, I had one person come up and tell me, they said, well, I was distracted the whole time because your phone kept going off, or your watch kept going off. And I was like, what? And I realized that every time I moved my wrist with that watch, it would light up.
Yeah.
And so they thought, like, I was just getting text messages all throughout my sermon. And I was like, really? Like, that's what you got out of the sermon? So, I mean, like, give me a break here. But, I mean, those are things that you're not prepared for. But that lady, like, she really gave me some sound wisdom.
Yeah, I remember taking maybe the most memorable thing for me was one that was one of the most disappointing things, because I didn't need another Old Testament class, but I took Joshua to Nehemiah just simply so I could sit and listen to Dr. Shank preach and teach and lecture.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm thinking, all right, it's my senior year. It's my last semester of school. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to listen to Dr. Shank basically preach 26 more sermons, because I loved listening to him preach and teach. And we get into this class and he starts asking questions. And, you know, he's taking comments, you know. The main ones were, can you list all the explicit mentions of the name of God? And all these, you know, it's like, you're not teaching. Like, you're just sitting here asking questions and you're letting this class teach itself. Like, this is not cool, man. This is not what I signed up for. And I'm like 3 weeks in and I begin to realize, oh my goodness, we are getting exactly what we want to get he wants us to get out of this class. But even more important than sitting and listening to him preach 26 more sermons, 26 more times I get to witness him teach us how to get something out of a old ancient text for ourselves. And I was like, okay, I guess that's acceptable. But, you know, in that moment I'm thinking, this is not what I wanted. I wanted to listen to Dr. Shank speak. I love listening to him speak. But that process of asking questions about a text of Scripture, finding the moments where God is explicitly speaking, the Lord says, Jehovah says, and what God says to his people, and then looking at what's going on with the people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, went through the story of Jephthah. Jephthah's not an easy story to talk about there in the Judges. And he made sense of it just by asking those questions. And that's been something that really kind of stuck out with me as it's just not something that we're very good at, I think, when you're dealing with something old and ancient like that, is I know how to teach people something, but how do I teach people to teach themselves? That was a valuable lesson for me to learn. Absolutely. And even though I hated it, I'll always remember it because of that. So, that
reminds me of one of those things I try to hammer into my teens, there's a difference between reading your Bible and studying your Bible.
Right.
And that's one of those differences that you just talked about. Like there's a difference.
Yeah, a huge difference.
That's that's really funny. That's really funny that you felt that way, because I took a class with him too, and I think it was like Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and Psalms or something like that. And I remember going, yeah, I want to know what you think. And then I remember at the end of it going, this is a really good class. And I remember sitting in the back corner going, okay, I'm going to just sit and soak all this in, to like going and asking him, because he had a seating chart, going and asking him if I could move closer into the center, because I wanted to be a part of the conversation. Like, and I felt like sitting in the back corner, like I wasn't able to like really be a part of the community.
Right.
And now I'm like, man, he's a genius.
We had an art major in that class who took notes by drawing pictures. I'm sitting there after class one day, and he kind of came over and asked him
one
about
of those people.
I know. He was asking about it. He was like, man, he kind of said, basically, why are you here? In a non-direct way. Like, why are you here? And the guy kind of said something, I thought it was interesting. And he's like, well, I mean, are you taking notes, or, what's going on? And so he opens up this notebook, and it's a sketch. I mean, it's a full-blown sketch of scenery. And he's like, yeah. And so he begins up in the corner, and he said, well, here you kind of started talking about the people of Israel. And when we started talking about what God says, God says this and this and this as he's going down through the rays of sunshine that are coming down to the land. And this is what was going on in Israel at the time. And I'm looking at that going, oh, dude. That is awesome. It's something I could never do. I can draw pictures,
right? But
I can't make those pictures speak.
Oh yeah. This stick figure is David, and this little line here represents. Yikes!
The trajectory of the rock.
I hear you there.
And the bigger stick figure is Goliath.
I've only. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can tell because he's bigger. And his head's been chopped off by David.
That's right. Yeah.
We always forget that part when we tell the story.
Yeah, the kids don't, though. The kids find that part of the story.
I wonder if for trunk or treat this year we could do David and Goliath, and I'll just give Sam like a basketball head, and he can just run around with it.
Yes. I have to send you a picture of the Goliath in our hallway.
Too much.
He has the face of the Rock.
I've seen him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He was up when y'all were here. I didn't remember.
I have seen Dwayne the Goliath Johnson. That's right.
I still need to like tweet a picture of that to him. And see
I think I actually took a selfie with him.
That's right. Oh! Any moments you felt like super unprepared?
Can you imagine? I would be unprepared for the remake of David and Goliath if he played Goliath. That would be amazing.
That's right.
Israel, can you smell what Goliath is cooking? Like, please, give me this.
All right.
That is such a bad tangent.
I'm writing a script. No, it's okay. We can write a script. I'm calling the Rock. Oh,
that's right.
Unprepared moments.
Tom Cruise could play David. He's so small.
He is so small, especially compared to
I have the most unprepared moment. I have the most unprepared moment that I've ever felt in ministry, and it takes place back in college. So let me paint the scene for you. I got a buddy who lives about an hour, 2 hours. I don't know. Oklahoma is strange to me, but anyway, he lived a couple hours away from OC. Invited me home. He's got a small church, maybe like 60, 80, 100 people, something like that. Anyway, he says, yeah, hey, why don't you come home? My dad's an elder. I asked him, he said, you could preach on Sunday if you want to. And I said, yeah, absolutely, man. Let's do this. That sounds fun. We were really big into ping pong right then, right? Like that was when I was really majoring in ping pong. And his church was like a big ping pong church. So I get there and we hang out. We play ping pong all weekend. His dad's really good. He's really good. We're having fun. It was awesome. It was a great weekend. Come Sunday, I preach for this little church, and it's always interesting when you preach for a crowd that you don't know whatsoever. and I preach, and it was really fun. It was good. And then the church was doing like this cookout afterwards, right? And so we're doing this cookout, and they're cooking, and I'm like in a half suit at this moment, and this tall skinny feller asked me, he says, "Hey, you want to play ping pong?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Like, let me just whip out my paddle that I just had next to my Bible, you know. And so we're playing ping pong, and he looks me dead in the eye after I score a point, and he says, "So, as a preacher, what do you think about birth control?" Boy, that ping pong ball just went right past me. I was like, "What? Like, hello?" You know, and I'm not making fun of, and I'm not stomping on anyone's beliefs when it comes to that or whatever. But as a non-married, middle of college, like I don't know. Let me have a Bible study on birth control. You know, how do I feel about it? You know, and he's talking. Right, and he's talking about within the confines of marriage. Like this isn't a talk about premarital sex or anything like that. This is a, should a married couple practice and use birth control? Is it God ordained, or are you trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Interfere with what God is, what God's trying to do. And turns out this guy has 9 children.
Oh wow!
So obviously I know what his family believes, and shout
Not a minister
again. That's cool, and he's not 9 kids on a minister's salary is pretty rough. But I just remember, like, I was so unprepared for that moment, and what an awkward and what a weird question just to ask. I remember I just said, I looked him back in the eye, because it was my service, and I said, "Well, I guess there's a reason why it's only 99.9% effective." Boom, and then I hit the ball. I was like, I think God can do more with that 0.1% than we could do with 100%. But that was like one of those moments, like you don't feel prepared for like awkward questions that just come out of the blue. And I've been now in ministry 9 years, and I have been on the street, and somebody's asked, I've been on a plane, and I said, "Well, I'm a youth minister." And they say, "Oh, so what do you think of this?"
Right.
And just cold cut, just right to, hey, no relationship, no friendship, no backstory, no nothing, just, boom, jump right into this. That was one of those moments where, like, I just felt unprepared. What a weird moment.
Yeah, so the guys in my football association know I'm a minister, right? And so when we, before games, it's usually, I lead a prayer before our weekly meetings and before we go out and take the field for ball games and stuff. But we had a guy on our crew, and I knew him, but I didn't know him real well. And he gets in the truck. We're on our way to a game site, and he says, "Hey, Fowler, you're a minister, right?" And I said, "Yeah, sure am." And he hands me this pamphlet, and he says, "What do you think about this?" And it's from, the flat earthers. And it's all the scriptural evidence of why the earth is flat.
Oh, nice.
And so I don't know if he's handing this to me because he believes it or because he's curious about it. And so I'm like, okay, how do I proceed here? So I'm going to ask a few probing questions to find out if this is something this guy actually kind of believes or buys into. Or is he going, "Hey, take a look at this thing that I got," and so trying to figure out where they're coming from.
Flat earthers,
right? Yeah, so those questions sometimes catch you super off guard. 2016 we had a big flood here, and I'm going to tell you, they prepared us for a lot of things in school. They really didn't prepare us for walking families through disaster. And it's there. You have this, and for us, like, our house wasn't flooded. And so I dealt with this huge amount of survivor's guilt because day after day after day, I'm going and standing in the middle of someone's life that's, balled up and tossed out on the curb. And then I'm going home and I'm sleeping in my bed. I still have power. Everything's intact. And so I was not prepared to walk that kind of emotional gauntlet of having to stand there in the midst of that destruction and then go home and look at God and say, so how come I'm having to deal with all these families and help them find you in the midst of this tragedy, and then I get to come home to a house that's all intact? First time I ever really understood what survivor's guilt was really kind of all about. Thankfully, God placed some people in my life who kind of slapped me upside the head and said, get out of that headspace. That's Satan trying to make you ineffective. Here's why you are where you are, and here's why you're more equipped to do this, because you can sleep at night in your own bed. Now you get to come out and you get to help these people find God in the midst of this tragedy. Wow. It was I was not ready. I was not ready to do that, and I would just go home and just be like, I don't know if I should eat or cry right now because I don't know what's going on. Pretty unprepared.
Oh man, yeah. Speaking to that,
there's just some.
Speaking to that, I mean, there's.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we have a little lag going on here.
I think so.
Speaking to that, eating or crying moment. I don't know how you prepare somebody emotionally for the stress and the guilt of ministry. I think everything that we spoke to today kind of like talks and points towards that. You feel so passionate about where you're at and where you're working, and there's a lot of emotion and a lot of stress. To us, like, the church is this big family unit. It is part of who I am. It's not a job. It's not like I work at Walmart and Home Depot offers me a job and I say, bye Walmart. And I go to Home Depot and it's like clean cut. It's very, different, you intertwine and mix your emotions. The longer I'm in ministry, the more I recognize, and I am right there when Paul writes, my heart aches for you guys, or I long to be with you,
right.
And I'm like, man, Paul's really passionate about these churches. And the longer I'm in ministry, I'm like, dude, I get it. Something that I was, and by the way, I did not, this came to me while we were talking, and I was unprepared to talk about this today on the podcast, but so this is going to be fun. So a man who means the world to me passed away not too long ago, and his name was Marshall Turner, and I have never, and I don't know that I ever will, I will never see somebody who lived out the joy of God, that joy that God gives us, that we're supposed to live in. I've never seen anybody live in it more than Marshall. And Marshall's story was probably like the saddest story that I'd ever heard. A drunken, abusive father, half siblings all over the place, kind of growing up under the staircase kind of a life. Met a beautiful wife, had some problems with some of his children and grandchildren, then got bladder cancer, beat cancer, came back, ended up taking his life later on in life. But if you talk to Marshall, like, you would never know that any of that bad stuff was happening or had happened to him, because he just was so thankful to Jesus and to God. And I can't remember the song, but there's a song that we sing, and like, you would sing it, and on the radio there's like a pause and they say Jesus, like, and it's really good, like, if you have instruments and everything like that. In a cappella, we kind of skip over that because we don't have that pause. And I remember teaching that song to the church, and every time Marshall would be like, Jesus, like, wherever it was, and it was like so awkward and out of tune and not the right moment, but I mean, he was praising, and it was so funny. But something that I was unprepared for was his passing. When he passed, I was in Kansas, and he was in Washington. I couldn't afford to fly back, or any of that kind of stuff, and like my heart hurt, and it still hurts. And
Right.
I still talk to his wife, Judy. This was a family that when we were struggling financially in Washington and didn't have food in the fridge, didn't have money in our bank account to buy food. I don't know how. I honestly don't know how. They would show up with 2 bags of groceries, and they'd be like, "Hey, we were just cleaning out our fridge, and we just thought maybe you guys would want our leftovers." I'd be like, "Oh, you mean this like just now purchased like food?" And they would knock on our door. Bella would bark like crazy. He would play with Bella. Judy would come in and she would put everything in our fridge. They'd love on us, pray on us, and then just leave.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome.
I don't know how they knew. I don't know what was going on, but they would just do that. And so this was a family that was, and I think something that I was not prepared for. This is probably a big one. This is probably a big can of worms. But as a minister, allowing other people to minister to me.
Right.
I'm so used to pouring into others and being that minister. And then if I need someone to pour into me, like I go to another preacher, another minister somewhere. I call Josh. I call Terry Kitson. I call Ben Cook. Those are my 3 go-to guys that I go to. But then allowing Marshall and Judy to minister to us. It's the first time that I have ever actually had surf and turf. I would go, they'd invite us over for dinner. I'd be like, "What do you want? Do you want steak or do you want salmon?" And I'd be like, "Salmon sounds good." I'd show up. Marshall's like, "Well, I really wanted steak, so we cooked both." And then here's garlic mashed potatoes and garlic bread and some green beans. And you'd just be like, this is so much food. And they're like, "Oh, by the way, here's all the leftovers."
Yeah, and we made enough for 8 people, even though we only invited.
It's just really
over.
cool. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so there was
just wild.
There's a family we met in Honduras, and I know, Adam, if you're watching, I know you think that you're the reason we're here in Baton Rouge, but Lee Hill is the reason we're here in Baton Rouge. And he'll know kind of why that's not funny, but very, very true as well. Just had such a connection with her and her family. Powerful, powerful people, raised up, just a whole slew of kids, faithful kids. But they really, William and Lee both really kind of took us under their wings. We became really tight friends. And we were here. She had kind of had some battles with cancer on and off. And there was always a possibility she knew that the cancer she had would return. And we were here about a year. It was in the middle of the flood that her cancer really came back strong. And you could tell that she was really weak a few times. And her daughter was getting married shortly after there. And I was supposed to preach her daughter's wedding in Gaston, Alabama. And Lee had said she was going to be there for Caroline's wedding. And, it had happened in the past. She said she was going to beat it. She did. If Lee said she was going to make it to Caroline's wedding, she was going to make it to Caroline's wedding. And so everyone just assumed that either she was doing better than we thought, or somehow she was going to be at Caroline's wedding. Well, I get a call on a Friday night after a football game that she had passed away. So I go over to her house. I preached her funeral on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we drove to Gaston, Alabama. And on Saturday, I preached her daughter's wedding. You talk about running the gamut of those emotions with a family in the span of 7 days. And then you compound that with, this isn't just simply another member or someone else that you've called to minister to, but this is, you talked about it being, family, close family. Super,
absolutely,
super unprepared. And it kind of throws you into those like really, really bizarre moments of, man, I'm rejoicing and grieving and mourning all at the same time, and maybe we can talk.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to spoil those. I think some pretty powerful moments there with talking about some bizarrities. We can talk about some of the bizarre things we've done another time. we could probably spend a whole episode talking about some of the bizarre things we do as ministers. But and just
right. How about there's the title? Was this in my job description?
Yeah, plumber, roofer, auto mechanic.
Right.
Got anything? Got anything?
I
for
wish
the
I would
folks
have learned
here?
some trade skills.
Right. Got anything for these guys before we sign off?
I just want you guys to know that here at Behind the Beards, like, we love you guys, and if you're a minister and if you need an outlet or something like that, we've got resources that we can help you, connect you with other people. But we really want to thank you all for being here today. We also want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. I always want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. Don't grow weary in doing good. And I think that is something that that you don't learn enough and you can't hear enough. Don't grow weary in doing good. This world's messy and life is messy. You'll never learn everything you need to know. You'll never come to a place where you feel fully prepared, but you can trust God. So allow Christ to use you and do something different, something good in his name. From Behind the Beards, this is Aaron and Josh, and we will see you all next week on Behind the Beards.
See you guys.
We're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.